Hello, welcome to Secure Talk, your trusted source of information on the latest threats, trends, tools, and technology related to cybersecurity and compliance.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Secure Talk. My name is Mark Schreiner, and I will be your host for this episode of Secure Talk. Today, we're going to be talking with Nick Lumsden, who is the CTO and Co-Founder of Tenacity Cloud. Nick has over 20 years of experience in security and compliance, and he's going to tell us a little bit about Tenacity, and then he's going to talk about how sprawl and cloud infrastructure can lead to security vulnerabilities and risk, where you should put your priorities in terms of which vulnerabilities you should go after first, and then basically tell how you can tell whether or not your cloud infrastructure or your cloud tenant is protected. But before we do all that, we want to say hi to Nick. Nick, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great, Mark. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Hey, so I looked at your LinkedIn profile. It looks like you're out in Ann Arbor.
I am, yeah, based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm a Michigan native, lived on the East Coast for a while, DC area. Decided, that wasn't the lifestyle for me. So back to Michigan and lakes and water and all the good stuff around here.
Sounds like Washington, lakes and water. So how is the summer treating you out there?
Oh, it's been great, man. It's it's a little hotter than we're used to, but 90-degree weather is a great excuse to get in the water and get outside and have fun. So been a great summer.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're in a bit of a heat wave this week as well. And it's so funny because I have neighbors who have air conditioners and never use them, and they're all excited right now because they get to turn them on.
That's funny.
Yeah. Hey, so Nick, before we dig into those questions that I discussed, can you tell us a little bit about Tenacity Cloud and what it is that you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Tenacity is really born out of my experiences and the experiences of my business partner, Jason, who we've worked together for the better part of a decade. I've been in the industry for 20 plus years, started as a developer, and, I've been in a lot of early stage and growth stage companies, highly secure, highly compliant infrastructures, and the same sort of problems just sort of manifest over and over and over. And, public cloud has been this great transformation of hardware into software, and it's made old problems interesting to solve again and impossible to solve them. And so, Tenacity, I would call it a secure cloud operating platform. We help answer a number of questions about cloud infrastructure. What do you have? Is it secure? Is it well managed? Is it well governed? Are you meeting your compliance requirements? Even is it optimized, and are you managing spend and attack surface the way that you should? And it's that we've been able to turn security and operating the cloud into a big data problem, and provide insights to our customers through the platform.
And is that primarily for people who are on AWS?
AWS and Azure. So,
Okay.
And we will eventually support Google, but we're focused right now on the big two.
And I'm assuming you do some type of scan of their settings, their security settings, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we basically plug into, it's a SaaS platform. We plug into their accounts or subscription, depending on what platform you're on, and we have the ability to basically read the metadata. Of course, we can't look at customer data or anything like that, but read the metadata about their infrastructure and analyze it. So that helps us understand their configuration, what things cost, utilization, really what it looks like from kind of a infrastructural configuration perspective. It's a massive amount of data. So we push that through our analytics engine and spit out all sorts of insights that are constantly improving and constantly evolving to help our customers.
Awesome. And then, I'm going to put the TCO kind of discussion off to the side, total cost of ownership, but in terms of the security signal, and if you're working alongside with Azure, you're working with Azure, are you working alongside Sentinel, or are you pulling signal from Sentinel, or are you pulling it directly from Azure? Where are you getting your data?
Yeah, we're actually pulling the metadata directly from Azure. And what we're solving for our customers is really the foundational security issue, which is around the configuration of the infrastructure itself, and helping them understand how to how to get their infrastructure into a point where they reduce noise in the rest of their cybersecurity program. So whatever tools they're laying over top of their infrastructure, let's make it so instead of there being 10,000 gaps in the infrastructure, can we narrow it down to the couple dozen or couple hundred that are necessary for the apps to actually run, and therefore reduce all the noise and false positives that manifest in the rest of the cybersecurity program.
So maybe we can back up a little bit, and you can tell us a little bit how actually what is sprawl in cloud infrastructure, and how do you define that? And then we can talk about how that leads to security vulnerabilities and of course increased risk.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want us to think about sprawl a couple of ways. Sprawl in kind of traditional sense of infrastructure can come from a lot of places inside of an organization now, and we'll hit on that. And there's also, the concept of drift and how that contributes to sprawl. First and foremost, the evolution of cloud, and especially public cloud, as our infrastructure has become software, the control over what resources are used, deployed, manifested, changed in the environment has distributed out to all sorts of actors inside of an organization. The bigger the organization, dramatically more actors have that sort of control. So what was once maybe an infrastructure engineer or an IT person or a cloud ops person that was deploying infrastructure is now anyone who can punch code can deploy that infrastructure. And so in organizations where you have dozens or hundreds or even thousands of developers, that's a whole lot more actors that can do really cool things with that infrastructure. With that really cool capability comes the unfortunate side effect of not everyone's going to do things the same way. Not everyone's going to have maybe discipline is the wrong word, but I'll use it here, the discipline to clean up after themselves or to manage the infrastructure in a way that's efficient, optimized, or secure. And we see that all the time where that infrastructure has been deployed, and very quickly folks have had to move on to a new project, or they're continuing to evolve in the project, and resources get left behind, and say QA resources, or perhaps some transitional or migratory resources that kind of get buried in the data and are left there and become attack surface and cost and risk in the environment.
Okay, and so what you would do with Tenacity is you'd look through and say, hey, here's what your infrastructure looks like right now. Here's what you have that's active or has been activated at some point. And here are some things that don't look like they're being used. They're kind of dormant. So maybe we want to clean those up because that'll help you reduce cost and reduce that attack surface.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the very first things that we help customers do is identify abandoned or orphaned resources, those that are just hanging out. And it's not uncommon that we can find in an environment, 5 to 10% of the environment is abandoned infrastructure. The longer the environment is out there, and there's some inflection points over a year and over 2 years, that number or that percentage tends to grow fairly significantly. So, that's one. Two is that, we help understand change that's happening in the environment. So think in terms of guardrails on the environment, where are changes happening, where changes used to happen, 20 years ago, once a quarter, maybe once a month. Now they're happening dozens, hundreds, sometimes thousands of times a day. Where are those changes happening that are creating drift, potentially could lead to sprawl, or most often leading to a vulnerability that is benign currently, or maybe benign in the moment, but can manifest as a real problem down the road.
Can you give a specific example of a problem you solved, and specific with the infrastructure, the potential costs, the potential, vulnerability issues, and then how you were able to kind of remediate that?
Yeah, let me give a couple that are pretty simple, but when you think about it from kind of a data and management perspective, the bigger your organization, the harder it is to find these. So the very first is, very simply being able to identify abandoned storage resources. Storage can hang out. It might have sensitive data, and it's fairly easy in operation to disconnect, say, a storage volume from an instance and leave it there, and not have done the cleanup on it. We can easily detect those. We can understand when those are orphaned, when they're abandoned, or when they're just been aging and unused for a long period of time. So that's one example. How we help clean those up: we help them identify them, we help them understand where they're located, and how much how likely it is that they're unused, so that they can actually go clean up those resources, either do something with that data or get rid of it, get rid of the attack surface, get rid of the cost in their environment. A second, from a guardrails perspective, a fairly common case is again from a storage, or think a database platform, deploying services very quickly, probably to do some testing. This is a pretty common case, is testing infrastructure. Infrastructure gets left out there, publicly accessible, with data on it, and we find this in, I don't know, 80% of the infrastructures that we analyze, or customers that sign up. There is infrastructure, whether data infrastructure or storage infrastructure, has been left unintentionally publicly accessible.
That's, in both cases, you're bringing a lot of value to the table there. Let me ask you this, because you said we help them to identify. So is this something that that you're running, or is the platform something that the internal security team can run on their own whenever they want, or is it something that's just kind of ongoing? How does that look like?
Yeah, it is a SaaS platform. So, the internal team, whether it's their cloud ops team, their dev team, their security team, can leverage the platform on their own to identify, the issues in their environment. And it is constantly consuming. I say constantly, it's checking many times a day for changes to the environment, and then reanalyzing that metadata. So it is a continuous monitor of what's going on in the environment, and continuous protection, helping our customers understand their posture from an asset, cost, security, and compliance perspective.
And what's the deployment process like?
Super easy. It's
Okay.
it actually, we have a complete self-serve mode, so customers can go out, and right now it's supported for AWS. It will very soon be supported for Azure, but within about 5 minutes, a person can sign up on their own, and the data will be flowing into the platform. They'll actually start to see insights within, let's say, 10 minutes start to finish. For Azure, it's right now it's still set up a call with us, and it takes us about 15 minutes, and we'll have your subscriptions integrated. That will be automated to complete self-service in just a very short time, very near term.
That long, huh?
We
15
believe in
minutes.
value quickly,
That's
the reality is the competitors, a lot of times it's long sales cycles and it takes forever. And we believe that, people should be able to try a tool, and the proof should be in the pudding. You should be able to get to that value very, very quickly and make a determination if Tenacity is of a value to you.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Hey, so, okay, you identify some vulnerabilities.
Mhm.
How do you prioritize?
Yeah, so we look at a number of factors. So, part of the problem in cybersecurity, I've lived in this industry for a really long time. I've been on the operational side of it. Jason, my business partner, has been on the CISO side of it, so security and compliance side of it. And, both of us saw this sort of issue manifest of, operationally, when I'm running operations teams, NOC, SOC, et cetera, they have, always more work than they have time to do it. And where they suffer is then in what work should they do? What's the important work to go do? And it's I think in many organizations I've experienced, this is kind of whatever is the squeakiest wheel, whoever's yelling the loudest, whatever alert is going off the most prominently. And that's not exactly the best way to protect yourself, right? So getting some deep insight into what's actually going on inside of an infrastructure, being able to find signal among noise is really important. So we look at a number of factors. We're turning, this security problem, this cloud management problem into a big data problem, doing the analysis, looking at impact factors like, potentially blast radius, looking at things like external exposure versus internal, looking at potentially the ability to elevate privileges, to look at, what potential IAM implications there are, et cetera, before we score and categorize a vulnerability and surface that as being the most impactful. So part of what we're doing is really around our scoring mechanism, and helping them understand where they can get, what vulnerability can they knock down to get the biggest bang for their buck and make sure that they're reducing the most risk right now, today, first thing they do.
And so, does your platform provide some type of score, like Microsoft's secure score or something like that?
Yeah, we do. We have a preparedness score. It's a double weighted score where, again, we're looking at, really how, not just how critical a potential vulnerability is, but what is the impact, what's the reach, and helping them understand overall in their environment, how prepared are they? I may say something that's unpopular here, but in my experience, it's impossible to get to perfection in security. It's just a necessity for an app and a business to function, and there's a reality of budget and dollars to hire the folks to help manage the risks. So you should have tools that support the folks getting to the highest possible preparedness, knowing they won't get to perfect.
Makes a lot of sense. So let me ask you, what's your typical customer profile?
So our target market is generally mid-market. It's folks who are, in public cloud, whether they're just starting their transition or whether they're in transition or whether they've recently transitioned. They're probably focused on, security and compliance. And they are looking for insight and help in, making sure that they're running in a, generally they're looking for help, whether it's getting to a best practice from a security perspective, or whether it's trying to achieve a compliance objective, whether it's, as easy as SOC 2 or as difficult as, trying to implement best practices around 853. That's usually when they're coming to us looking for data and insight.
Okay, when that brings up actually another question, do you provide some type of mapping towards different regulatory bodies? So for example, with Microsoft, you have compliance manager, I think it's called, and you can see where you're at just based upon your Microsoft and Azure tenant, right? Where you're at in terms of a particular regulatory body. You can assign responsibility. You can follow up. It's kind of like a project management / monitoring tool. Do you provide something like that, or how does your tool work?
We do. So from an analytic perspective, of course, we're doing the checks to understand what technical requirements are necessary to pass or meet the obligatory requirements, and we map those then out to the framework itself. And one of the parts of our platform that our customers rave about is that we have made our continuous compliance components viewable or navigable based on the actual compliance framework itself. So you can actually navigate through the framework, through the control groups, through the individual controls themselves, actually see contextually what the control requires, and then the sorts of checks that Tenacity is doing, so that you can actually understand your progression towards achievement or towards maintaining that those requirements on an ongoing basis. The very earliest feedback we heard from our customers in using other tools and in using the cloud providers was that the tools out there didn't help them really communicate internally to their own compliance teams, to their own GRC teams, to their auditors and assessors, and it made it difficult for them to speak and communicate as to what needed to be done. So we built the platform from the perspective of how do we give insight from a different point of view and help them understand from really the framework's point of view, and bring all those teams together so they can communicate inside the platform.
Awesome. Hey, so what regulatory bodies are of most concern to your target customers, to these mid-market customers?
Yeah, so I think you have kind of the basics, right? Any publicly traded company, any company that's dealing with PHI or a whole lot of PII, you're going to end up with, SOC 2 and ISO 27001 are really common. PCI if they're using cardholder data, those are the most common ones that we see. But of course, we have healthcare organizations that are down the path of NIST 800-171, or organizations that are really highly focused on security. And that might be, financial services, fintech companies that are focused more NIST 853 because they're looking for a gold standard. And we also support things like CIS, and there's a handful of others that I'm not rattling off here. But we move very quickly to support the frameworks that our customers ask for. And so, especially as we go into new organizations and we see a new need, we respond. Our internal team responds very, very quickly in being able to map, understand a framework, and bring it to the platform. So we're always responding to customers' needs there. We want to build out and have a bigger and better library of those frameworks than really any other player in the industry.
Awesome. And how do you engage with customers? Is this something they can do through your website, or do you do outbound, or do you work through partners, or how does that work?
All the above. So, customers can easily find us at tenacitycloud.com. They can sign up for a free trial. They can integrate right there from the platform. They can engage directly with us if they want to. We also have partners that leverage the platform in their services to help their customers as well. So there's a number of ways that the platform is used.
And if you were to give one piece of advice other than using Tenacity Cloud to your customers, your target customers that are, let me back up. Companies that are looking to migrate to the cloud, okay, and there's still a few out there that haven't. What advice would you give them from the security and compliance perspective?
Well, I have two things that I tell people. So the most important one, first of all, is getting this right early on, getting security and compliance right from the early stages of a migration, from the early stages of your cloud adoption, is so much easier than coming back and trying to do it later. I mean, it's not a linear equation. It is exponentially harder once you have sort of a mess, right? And I say that having been the person who's created the mess. And so in the past. And the second thing I would say is, there are realities to hiring right now that make it very difficult to find talent quickly to do the sorts of things that give businesses advantage in public cloud and leveraging these services. It is not just a function of going and finding the right people. It's making sure that you're finding the right tools, the right partners, and the right people all together, in building a program around that.
Yeah, that seems to be a constant challenge of deciding, do we, build this and manage it in-house, or do we buy something and run it in-house, or do we outsource the whole thing to, a subject matter expert that has the tool and is just going to, do a plug and play thing for us. And, I think we probably both agree that there's an increasingly growing trend to doing the last one, just, buying something that's easy to plug and play. We don't need any custom development, and we don't need that custom in-house subject matter expert because, like you said, it's hard to get them. It's hard to find the people.
It really is.
What questions do your customers and prospects ask you about the security and or compliance of Tenacity Cloud?
Well, one, they want to know if we eat our own dog food, and the answer is always emphatically yes. So that's one. Two is there's always the question of, what power, what control do we have, out in our customers' environments, and the answer is none. we can, help with metadata in understanding that. But there's we take security very, very seriously. We want to make sure that there's not a honeypot created. So those are two things that they ask about us. Gosh, I don't know. What other questions would you ask, Mark?
I think those are probably the two leading ones. I'd want to know, what exactly, what visibility do you as the platform provider have in terms of my internal security posture, compliance posture? A lot of companies are reluctant to kind of share that. They're concerned, right? I mean, obviously, you're a trusted provider, trusted partner, but they still want to kind of keep their cards close to their chest in terms of any potential issues that are out there.
Yeah, and we do see that now. That's a rare case that they're so concerned that they don't want to use the platform. But we do offer a deployment model that does allow for the platform to be isolated if an organization absolutely needs that and is willing to. It's a little bit different from a pricing model, but it does work. So they can have a deployment that's really isolated to them and provides them benefit without the perceived risk of the platform understanding their internal posture.
Excellent. Well, hey, maybe just a last couple questions here, more on the business side. Tell us a little bit about, because I think Tenacity Cloud's been around for just a little over 2 years. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
So tell me about the creation and evolution of the company to date, and where you are and where you expect to be going over the next 6, 12, 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jason and I, we come from most recently, secure cloud in the provider space. And after our previous exit, we spent about a year out in the industry talking to, everyone we knew and a whole lot of people we didn't know, going to events, speaking to investors, speaking to other operators, analysts, just anyone that would give us a half hour of their time, and really trying to understand the going concerns inside of cybersecurity and public cloud, because that's where we knew we wanted to play. And what we found out very early on in that process was that, these same darn problems that we had seen exist, and they manifest over and over and over, regardless of the technology stack. And those problems are around, visibility, detectability, and observability of infrastructure in what's going on. And all issues of security preparedness and exploit, start at the root of configuration, of how are we controlling and managing users and privilege and infrastructure and access to our environments. And if we can get that right, then we reduce noise and reduce attack surface. And so, we decided that it was time to go out and solve that problem. So we started the company a little over 2 years ago. We raised our seed round September of 21. And we've been cooking along ever since. The evolution of Tenacity, there is what you'll see next from us is we have all this data. So there are AI plays in the works that are coming to provide even more intelligence in the platform. There is also what we're hearing from some customers is the desire for guardrails on the environment, not just detect and help understand the environment, but prevent issue from happening, consume infrastructure as secure infrastructure. And so that is coming very, very soon, where our customers who want that will be able to consume AWS and Azure services as natively as secure services, and not having those services drift out of security and compliance. And I think you'll see us in Series A and Series B and so on in the not too distant future, doing good things and growing. And we're always looking for good people, both internally and as customers, to join us for that ride and influence us and tell us all the cool things that they want to see in a platform like Tenacity.
Awesome. Sounds really exciting. And I mean, just given the momentum of movement to the cloud and the expansion of the use of the cloud, I'm super excited for you. And a lot of people think like, most of the companies in America, they've already made this move to the cloud, at least as much as they are going to move. Obviously, there's still a substantial number of companies that are in progress or haven't made the move yet. But when you get outside the U.S., for example, it's there's a whole nother wave coming in Europe and in Asia, and there's going to be a wave behind that. So I think you're in it at the right time, and your future looks to be very bright. So with that said, I'd like to wish you and your team an amazing second half of 2022.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate that.
Hello, welcome to Secure Talk, your trusted source of information on the latest threats, trends, tools, and technology related to cybersecurity and compliance.